The build up to the hammer was absolutely amazing. There wasn't one movie that to me completed what I wanted in a Thor movie, although each one has a lot of good parts. So let's start off with Thor 2011. That's the first Thor, and this one is much more traditional. It goes back to the lineage of Odin, Loki, Thor, mythology. Those were actual gods, so appreciate that. The pros for 2011 Thor. The biggest pro for me was a buildup of the hammer. As soon as Thor loses his hammer, to me, it was just like an instant. I want to see him with the hammer back right now. I knew that the movie was trying to make me do that, but it executed it so well, especially with Anthony Hopkins. My favorite performance from Anthony Hopkins in all the Thor movies was definitely in number one, and he really gives the scene so much more energy and emotion with the statement as he throws the hammer into the portal. The statement goes through his head before Thor comes back. The build up to the hammer was absolutely amazing. I didn't really like too much things with Earth. I'll put that in the cons as well, but the middle of the movie was just the best because, at least for me, I wanted to see him with this hammer back so bad, and I just literally could not wait, and they did the build up perfectly. And this is probably one of my favorite progressions of Thor. In other movies, it just doesn't really feel as, he's one person, he falls, and then he has to fix himself or become kind of a little bit of a better man. In all of the movies, this progression of Thor was my favorite. The cons of this one. The cons, to be honest, was the music absolutely killed it a few times. Like I was saying, it's going to be spoilers throughout this whole review. Just going to tell you right now, I actually recommend that you watch these movies if you haven't watched them. When he walks out to fight the robot kind of near the end before he gets his hammer back, it was so intense and he was playing it so good, and it was just hitting on all aspects, but the music just wasn't as intense and wasn't as serious as I wanted to. And same when he gets his hammer back, it just felt really fake and dumb. It was just kind of corny when the whole buildup was really serious, really entertaining. Probably the most engaging story-wise was this middle part of this movie was actually my favorite. The Earth scenes weren't my favorite, so I really liked Asgard. The colorful atmosphere they had, the vibrant, it was just a really good atmosphere, and I really wanted to see more of that. When they threw it to Earth, I'm like, okay, they're trying to make that world a little more relatable because you're throwing Thor here. I totally get it, but it just wasn't my favorite. Although I do like Natalie Portman and her friend's character, I did appreciate those characters. Liked the Asgard scene a lot more personally. There wasn't that much action in this one really at all. That's a huge downside to this movie, and to be honest, this was the first one. They probably didn't have that much budget, and from what I can see, a lot of superhero movies, when it's their first one and it's not a lot of budget, they have a good amount of small scenes, but they don't have an overdone high CGI movie, so it's going to be a little more story based, which I kind of appreciated. But at the same time, Thor goes off in these crazy scenes with the CGI just destroying stuff. I do like a decent amount of that in the movie as well, and there wasn't as much in this one. 2011 Thor. Now let's go into Thor the Dark World. The way the first one ended with Natalie Portman and Thor separated, I really wanted them back too. And for some reason, because I didn't see her in the later films or later Avengers and stuff, I kind of thought that it was a done deal, but it was really nice and refreshing seeing her come back in the Dark World. The Dark World is kind of like the black sheep. Nobody really likes this movie. It really sucks because I really like Thor, but this movie does dip. It isn't as good as the first one, and it goes away with a lot of the traditional aspects of the Thor movie that I really appreciated from the first one. The pros personally is that Jane returned. I really liked Natalie Portman and just their chemistry. The way the first one left, it made me really want them to get back, and I was happy that it ended up happening. This one had a lot more action than the first one, which I appreciated. Those were pretty much the two main things that I liked about this movie. The cons, which I have a lot of, it wasn't really very lifelike. The first one kind of felt it had room to breathe. This one just kind of feels very rushed. It doesn't really have as much organic spunk or organic laughs. Everything kind of feels generally rushed. I mean, almost everything in this movie is forgettable. I almost forgot about this movie like right after I watched it pretty much, because it just kind of goes so many places and it doesn't really build to anything really big, in my opinion. It was just really forgettable. Thor is really down and depressed in this one. I can understand you could have that for a little while, but part of what I liked about Thor was his funny, carefree attitude. And I understand you want to make it like, so, oh, you can't just be carefree and have everything just work out for you. That's not how life works. I totally get that. He was just a little kind of down in the dumps when I like the cocky, arrogant, everything's handled Thor, I got it, cracking jokes. That kind of Thor versus the down and serious Thor. He was like that most of the movie. I didn't really like it. It has a very dark theme. Ragnarok and the first one have a very light, vibrant theme that I really enjoyed. This one just has an overall darker theme to it. I really like the colors of Asgard. spoiler alert, Thor's mom dies, and it just kind of feels like it's supposed to amp up the story and amp up the stakes. And I just really liked her character much more than what this movie was, and I really wish she was back, but they kind of did it to amp up things that make sense. That was Thor: The Dark World. Very forgettable. Thor Ragnarok. Now this one is the popular one, the one that most people know about, that most people seen. I've heard about it, everyone talking about that it's really good. There's a lot of stuff I didn't like, but then there was a lot of good stuff that was very new, so we'll get into that right now. The pros of this movie is that it has a bright, colorful theme, probably even more colorful than the original, and I really just like that overall scheme of a Thor movie. You could have some dark spots, I get that, but I just like an overall colorful, big, fun Thor movie. I really appreciate the color scheme in this one. This is probably the funniest Marvel movie that I ever seen, and to be honest, I'm not really watching Marvel movies to laugh, but there was at least 3, 4, 5 times that were just really funny, and it's mainly Thor and Loki, the way that they sell stuff and the way that they take things seriously at certain times. It really is hilarious at times, and to be honest, I'm gonna put some of the humor in the cons as well. Some really funny scenes in this one. Even though I'd probably prefer it to be a little less funny overall, it was funny. I really liked the last half of the movie. If I was going to watch this movie again, I could watch it all the way, but I would rather just start it from the last half personally. I really like that Thor hulking up kind of and getting a little bit stronger, getting more of like a thundery look. I really appreciated that. I really appreciated having the Hulk in there. It was kind of like a nice little mix up, having some of the crew together and just seeing like a little bit of somebody else in a movie. I appreciate it. It had really good action scenes and CGI, definitely the best out of all of them. Good progression of places that they go. Most of the time the originals, they're in Asgard or they go to some realm. This one has a good mix of different places. You don't really know where the final battle is going to kind of end up and go. Let's jump into the cons. Again, there's a lot of spoilers here. The hammer break, I really wasn't a fan of the hammer break. Again, it kind of goes against that classic Thor. Later in the Avengers, he does get something back. He doesn't just go without a weapon the whole time, but it kind of just felt like I'm watching Thor. His hammer breaks, it doesn't feel like you're trying to give me a good Thor movie. It's almost like about his sister more than him. Thor is disrespected and he's like a rag doll for the first half of the movie. They just create that he has a sister out of nowhere. It's not in mythology. The sister's just stronger than him no matter what happens. She breaks his hammer. He gets sent to some planet and some random guys trap him and he can't move. After that, another girl takes him and puts something in his neck to basically take control of him at any time and shut him off. And then that goes on for 30, 45 more minutes. So it's just like he's a rag doll the whole time. It's like I'm trying to watch it for Thor, and it seemed like it was more about the Valkyrie girl and his sister versus Thor. Even at the end, after Thor hulks up, he still can't beat his sister. So I would much rather have like him become stronger than his sister. His sister starts Ragnarok, he kills her, but then he can't save everybody because she destroyed it, so they go on the ship and leave. That's a much better ending to me, but for some reason they just want to create the sister out of nowhere and put her like much better than Thor. It just wasn't for me. There was no build up either. It was just like, oh bam, she's here. It was a little too long. The first 2 Thors were 1 hour and 50 minutes. I really thought that was a perfect amount of time for this movie. They do try to cram in more CGI and more action and putting the Hulk in there, and I totally see all that, but it was a little bit slow at times, and I felt like 1 hour and 50 minutes is the perfect amount for a Thor movie. Just make it really jam-packed. I kind of do like Led Zeppelin a little bit. It just really doesn't fit Thor entering his badass form. It just does not really fit that in my opinion, and they used the Led Zeppelin twice. It didn't fit for me personally. I don't mind Led Zeppelin if it was like a 70s or an 80s movie or like some older movie and it was kind of reminiscent of the time. I could totally see it fitting, but just not for Thor fighting people in Asgard. It's just so new and colorful. I would rather have something newer than Led Zeppelin in my opinion. Another one is like his haircut. It just kind of goes away from the traditional Thor as much as possible. So that's my review on all the Thor movies. I really like the traditionalness of the first one, but it didn't have that much action. The second one was super forgettable. Definitely the third out of these 3 if I was going to rank them. And the last one just had so much more action and so much more funny scenes. Like definitely the funniest movie of the 3. I would say that the third one's a little bit more towards kids and the first one's a little bit more towards, you know, people wanting that classic classic Thor story. You're watching Thor to overcome things, as Thor is the biggest person in the movie, but that's not really how it is in Ragnarok, although Ragnarok is entertaining. Let me know what you thought of the Thor movies. It's hard to rank these because it seems like they're trying to save a lot of the big things that Thor does for the Avengers. These movies are kind of like in between Avengers or the build up to Avengers. I think all three of these come right before the next Avengers movie. Let me know what you think of the Thor movies. Let me know what you think was the best. That Thor Ragnarok, I absolutely hated it the first half and I ended up coming around and liking it at the end. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers. I can't do it without any of you guys' help. You guys are the best. Hopefully having a great day at home. See you all in the next video. Peace. But anyways, guys, we're on the road to